What's going on here, officer?
Ma'am, this is an investigation into theft. A purse has been stolen.
Investigation into what? That's my son. These are my bags.
Sure they are. Show me the receipts.
Officer Dale Pruitt had 11 years with the Lakewood Police Department and exactly zero tolerance for what he called suspicious behavior when he made the most catastrophic assumption of his career on a Sunday afternoon in March 2023, outside a Cracker Barrel in suburban Atlanta. 16-year-old Elijah Crawford had just finished chicken and dumplings with his mother, no criminal record, honor roll student, carrying shopping bags full of leather hobo bags his mom had purchased from the gift shop, receipt in hand, items paid for, doing absolutely nothing wrong. But something about Elijah carrying those bags toward a black Lexus made Pruitt reach for his radio and call for backup. What happened next would trigger an internal investigation, destroy a career, and put the entire department under a microscope they'd never escape. Before we go further, if stories about power, accountability, and the consequences of assumptions matter to you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. These stories don't tell themselves, and your support helps us keep shining light on moments that need to be seen. Dale Pruitt wasn't new to controversy. His personnel file showed 8 citizen complaints over a decade, 5 involving accusations of racial profiling during traffic stops, 2 involving excessive force allegations that were sustained but not actionable, and 1 formal reprimand for failure to follow de-escalation protocols. The department had sent him to implicit bias training twice. Supervisors noted his tendency to act on gut instinct rather than observable facts. This failure to change would cost everyone involved. When it was 1:17 p.m. on a bright Sunday, the Cracker Barrel parking lot was packed with after-church families. Elijah's mother, District Attorney General Monica Crawford, had just used the restroom inside while Elijah loaded their purchases, 2 decorative leather hobo bags, still in Cracker Barrel shopping bags, with the store logo plastered across the sides, into the trunk. Pruitt was 3 cars over, finishing his own lunch in his patrol car, when he glanced up and saw a black teenager in a hoodie carrying multiple shopping bags toward an expensive vehicle. Something clicked. He radioed dispatch. "I've got a possible theft in progress at the Cracker Barrel on North Lake. Black male, late teens, multiple bags, heading toward a black Lexus, requesting backup." No crime had occurred, no alarm had sounded, no one had reported anything stolen. Elijah heard the command before he saw the uniform. "Stop right there." He froze, bag still in his hands, and turned around slowly. The officer was walking toward him fast, hand near his belt, eyes locked. Elijah did exactly what his mother had taught him since he was old enough to understand. Stay calm, keep your hands visible, comply with every instruction, speak respectfully. "Sir, these are my mom's bags. We just ate lunch inside." "Put them down, step away from the vehicle." Elijah set the bags on the pavement, stepped back 2 paces, kept his hands in front of him where Pruitt could see them. His heart was racing, but his voice stayed steady. He'd been through scenarios like this in his head 100 times. Never thought he'd actually need the script. Pruitt approached the bags, glanced inside. Leather hobo bags, brand new. Just tags still attached, Cracker Barrel logo on everything. But instead of apologizing or asking a clarifying question, Pruitt doubled down. "You got a receipt for these?" "My mom has it. She's inside. She just bought them like 10 minutes ago." "Your mom?" "Yes, sir." "Stay right here. Don't move." Pruitt walked toward the Cracker Barrel entrance, leaving Elijah standing in the parking lot, hands still visible, stomach twisting. A woman loading groceries into her SUV 2 spaces away noticed the interaction immediately. She pulled out her phone, started recording. Later, she'd tell investigators what stood out to her. The boy wasn't resisting, wasn't arguing, wasn't doing anything that looked remotely guilty. And those bags had the store's name printed across them in letters 6 inches tall. Inside the restaurant, an assistant manager named Tanya Rodriguez saw Pruitt walk back in and head toward the register. She recognized him. He ate there most Sundays. But the look on his face told her something was wrong. "Officer Pruitt, everything okay?" You had a theft reported? Black kid, multiple bags? Tanya blinked. No theft. We've been quiet all day. Monica Crawford walked out of the restroom, drying her hands, scanning the dining room for Elijah. Not at their table. She glanced toward the exit, saw flashing lights through the glass doors. Her stomach dropped. By the time she reached the parking lot, 2 more patrol cars had arrived. Elijah was still standing exactly where Pruitt had left him. Hands visible, posture rigid. 3 officers now. 1 had approached the Lexus, running the plates. Monica's professional training kicked in before her maternal panic could. She walked toward the scene, voice firm but controlled. "What's going on here?" Pruitt turned. "Ma'am, please step back. This is an active investigation." "Investigation into what? That's my son. Those are my bags. I purchased those items less than 15 minutes ago. If you're thinking what I'm thinking right now, go ahead and type receipt in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because what happens when this officer realizes who he's dealing with is going to redefine the word consequences." Monica reached into her purse, pulled out the receipt, and handed it to Pruitt. He glanced at it. Time-stamped 1:04 p.m. 2 leather hobo bags. Paid in full. Everything matched. But he still didn't apologize. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your ID." Monica tilted her head slightly. "You're going to need to see my ID?" "Yes, ma'am. Standard procedure." She pulled out her wallet, handed him her driver's license and her State of Georgia District Attorney General credentials. Pruitt's face changed. Not immediately, not dramatically. But his eyes widened just enough, and the confidence in his posture shifted into something closer to uncertainty. One of the backup officers, a younger guy named Stevens, stepped closer, saw the credentials, and whispered something sharp under his breath. Monica's voice stayed level, but the authority in it was unmistakable now. "Officer Pruitt, you stopped my son, who was loading purchased items into our vehicle in broad daylight in front of a crowded restaurant. Based on what, exactly?" Pruitt cleared his throat. Suspicious activity, ma'am." "Define suspicious." Silence. "He was carrying bags with the store's logo in the store's parking lot after we ate at the store. You saw a black teenager near an expensive car and assumed theft. Is that an accurate summary?" Pruitt's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I was following protocol." "Protocol for what?" "There was no call. No complaint. No alarm. You created this situation based on an assumption, and now you're doubling down instead of admitting you made a mistake." The woman recording from 2 spaces over had moved closer. Her video would later show the entire exchange, Elijah's calm compliance, Pruitt's refusal to de-escalate, Monica's controlled fury, and Stevens pulling Pruitt aside, clearly trying to get him to walk it back. Tanya, the assistant manager, had followed Monica outside, yet she'd brought the store's transaction log on a tablet, showing the exact timestamp and items purchased. She handed it to Stevens, not Pruitt. "Everything checks out. She bought those bags at 1:04. Paid with a credit card, no issues." Stevens nodded, then turned to Pruitt. "Dale, we're good here. Let's wrap this up." But Pruitt wasn't done. "Ma'am, I still need to verify." "Verify what?" Monica's voice didn't rise, but the steel in it was undeniable. "You have the receipt. You have the transaction log. You have my credentials. You have 3 witnesses telling you there's no crime. What exactly are you verifying, Officer Pruitt?" Pruitt opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Stevens, who was shaking his head slowly, eyes wide with alarm. Finally, Monica stepped closer, lowering her voice so only the officers could hear. "I'm going to leave now with my son and my legally purchased leather hobo bags. I will be filing a formal complaint with your department tomorrow morning, and I will be requesting body camera footage from all 3 of you, dash cam footage from all 3 vehicles, and witness statements from everyone in this parking lot. Do you understand?" Pruitt nodded stiffly. "Good. Elijah, get in the car." Elijah loaded the bags into the trunk with shaking hands, climbed into the passenger seat, and didn't speak until they were 3 blocks away. "Mom, I didn't do anything wrong." Monica reached over, squeezed his hand. I know, baby. I know. But what she knew, and what Pruitt didn't fully grasp yet, was that this wasn't over. Not even close. The body cameras had captured everything. The witness video was already circulating. And Monica Crawford wasn't just any parent. She was the chief law enforcement officer for the entire state, with jurisdiction over every prosecutor's office and the authority to initiate investigations into police misconduct. Pruitt had just humiliated the one person in Georgia with the power and motivation to make sure this never happened to anyone else's child again. By 9 a.m. Monday, Monica had filed a formal complaint with the Lakewood PD's Internal Affairs Division. By noon, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation had opened a parallel inquiry at her request. By 3 p.m., the witness video had been shared 40,000 times on social media, and local news crews were parked outside the police station demanding answers. The chief of police, Kevin Barnett, issued a statement calling the incident concerning and promising a thorough review. But behind closed doors, he was scrambling. Monica Crawford wasn't just any complainant. She had access to every piece of evidence, every personnel file, every complaint ever filed against Pruitt, and she wasn't asking for favors. She was demanding accountability. The body camera footage was turned over within 48 hours. It showed exactly what Monica and the witnesses had described: a calm teenager complying with every instruction, a mother presenting clear evidence of purchase, and an officer refusing to admit error even when confronted with facts. If you think this is already wild, just wait until you hear what the investigation uncovered about Pruitt's history. Hit subscribe if you want to see how deep this goes, and drop accountability in the comments if you believe people in positions of power need to answer for their illegal actions. The GBI investigation didn't just review the CrackerBarrel incident, it pulled Pruitt's entire career history. What they found painted a disturbing picture. Over 11 years, Pruitt had initiated 174 suspicious person stops. Of those, 89% involved Black or Latino individuals. In a jurisdiction where the population was 34% Black, Pruitt's stops showed a racial disparity that exceeded 4-to-1. Of the 8 complaints in his file, 5 had been dismissed as unsubstantiated or unable to confirm. But when investigators re-interviewed the complainants, a pattern emerged. Young Black men and women stopped for looking out of place, acting nervous, or matching a description that was never documented. In 2019, Pruitt had stopped a Black woman leaving a Target with electronics. She'd had the receipt. He'd still detained her for 20 minutes, demanding to search her vehicle. The complaint was filed, reviewed, and dismissed because the officer articulated reasonable suspicion. In 2021, Pruitt stopped a Latino teenager walking through a neighborhood with a backpack. The teen was delivering newspapers. Pruitt had questioned him for 15 minutes, ran his ID, and only released him after a homeowner intervened. Another complaint, another dismissal. Civil rights attorney Jasmine Okafor reviewed the case and didn't mince words. This is textbook racial profiling. Officer Pruitt operated on bias, not evidence, and the department enabled it by dismissing complaints, sending him to training that clearly didn't work, and allowing him to continue making stops that violated people's civil rights. Dr. Marcus Bell, a criminal justice professor at Emory University, analyzed the data. When you see disparities this extreme, you're not looking at random chance. You're looking at implicit bias or explicit bias guiding decision-making, and when that bias is documented repeatedly without consequences, it becomes systemic failure. The GBI report, released 8 weeks after the CrackerBarrel incident, was damning. It found that supervisors had reviewed Pruitt's stop data annually, but never flagged the racial disparities. Training on implicit bias had been completed but never assessed for behavioral change. Complaints had been dismissed based on officer discretion, without interviewing witnesses or reviewing available footage. Department policy allowed officers to initiate stops based on suspicious behavior without defining what that meant. The report concluded, Officer Pruitt's pattern of racially biased stops was both predictable and preventable. The department's failure to intervene enabled civil rights violations that harmed dozens of residents. On May 9, 2023, exactly 7 weeks after the Cracker Barrel incident, Dale Pruitt was fired, not suspended, not reassigned, terminated. The department released a statement. Officer Pruitt's actions violated department policy, state law, and the public trust. His employment has been terminated effective immediately. Pruitt appealed through the police union, arguing that he'd followed his training and acted in good faith. The union withdrew support 2 weeks later after the full GBI report was made public and community pressure became impossible to ignore. Local news covered the firing on every evening broadcast. The story wasn't just about one bad stop. It was about a decade of unchecked profiling that had finally been exposed because the victim's mother had the power to demand answers. Monica didn't file the lawsuit for herself. She filed it on behalf of Elijah. The complaint, filed in federal court, sought $1.2 million in damages and outlined 3 claims: racial profiling, unlawful detention, and emotional distress. But Monica made it clear from the beginning, this wasn't about the money. It was about forcing change. Her attorney, David Chen, laid out the terms in settlement negotiations: financial compensation for Elijah, our mandatory department-wide reforms, public accountability, and a commitment to track and report stop data by race going forward. The city resisted at first, offering $75,000 to settle quietly. Monica refused. The case went to trial. Before we get to the verdict, I need you to do something. If this story has made you think about power abuse, bias, and what happens when people finally get held accountable, subscribe to this channel. Share this video. Comment change. If you believe one person with courage can shift an entire system. The trial lasted 6 days. The jury heard testimony from Elijah, Monica, the witness who recorded the video, Tanya, the assistant manager, and 3 civil rights experts. They reviewed body camera footage, dashcam footage, personnel files, and 10 years of stop data. Pruitt took the stand and defended his actions. He claimed he'd seen furtive movements and behavior consistent with theft. Under cross-examination, he couldn't explain why carrying shopping bags with a store logo in a store parking lot constituted suspicious behavior. He couldn't explain the racial disparities in his stop history. He couldn't explain why he'd refused to accept the receipt and transaction log as proof of purchase. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They awarded Elijah $875,000 in compensatory and punitive damages. They found the Lakewood Police Department liable for failing to supervise and discipline Pruitt, despite clear warning signs. They mandated policy reforms including mandatory bias audits of all officer stop data every 6 months, independent review of all complaints involving race, body camera footage to be preserved and reviewed for every stop, our annual community reporting on stop demographics. The verdict sent shockwaves through Georgia law enforcement. Other departments scrambled to review their own stop data. 3 additional lawsuits were filed against Lakewood PD by people Pruitt had stopped in previous years. 2 were settled. 1 resulted in another 6-figure judgment. Pruitt became unemployable in law enforcement. His post-certification, the credential required to work as a cop in Georgia, was revoked. He moved out of state 6 months after the trial. Reports surfaced that he'd applied to departments in Tennessee and Alabama. Both rejected him once they saw his history. Elijah used part of the settlement to establish a scholarship fund for students pursuing criminal justice degrees with a focus on civil rights. He graduated high school with honors. I enrolled at Morehouse College and started speaking publicly about his experience. Monica continued her work as District Attorney General, but the case became personal fuel. She pushed for statewide reforms on stop and frisk policies, testified before the state legislature on racial profiling, and made sure Elijah's story became a case study in every training session her office conducted. 3 years later, the Lakewood Police Department's stop data showed dramatic improvement. Complaints involving racial profiling dropped 67%. Community trust surveys showed measurable gains. The department hired its first ever director of equity and accountability, a position created directly because of Elijah's case. Dale Pruitt never issued a public apology. He never acknowledged that his assumptions were wrong. He lost his career, his reputation, and his ability to work in the only profession he'd ever known, all because he saw a black teenager carrying shopping bags and couldn't imagine a world where that didn't equal theft. Elijah is 19 now, still carries the memory, still gets anxious in parking lots, but he also carries something else, proof that even when the system is stacked against you, sometimes the right person with the right power at the right time can force it to bend. If you think that case was intense, wait until you hear about the traffic stop that ended with a grandmother in handcuffs, a viral video, and a police chief forced to resign. That story's coming next. Don't miss it.